My name is Bella. Life has a way of showing you who holds the reins. Not too long ago, I would have eagerly shared my excitement about marrying Willie, the man of my dreams. I thought stepping away from my thriving career at Bentic Tech to dedicate myself to our marriage was the right call. After all, isn't love supposed to matter more than career success? Bentic Tech had its quirks, but they had firm rules, particularly around relationships in the workplace. After Willie and I tied the knot, things became awkward. Our boss, Gary, wasted no time with his ultimatum, almost as though we were contestants in a reality show. That night felt like a dramatic scene, and with love clouding my judgment, I agreed. The next morning, I walked away from the job I had worked so hard to build. Fast forward to today, I'm on my knees, cleaning spilled cereal off the floor, while Willie, about to be promoted, can't even manage to eat without making a mess. Didn't your mother teach you anything? I joke, directing my words toward the living room. My voice falls flat, and his response is just as absent. I let it slide, not worth the argument. We used to joke like old friends, but now every conversation feels like navigating a minefield. Hours pass, and Willie is sprawled on the couch, eyes glued to the TV. The dinner I spent hours preparing remains untouched, and the silence between us is louder than any argument could ever be. Are we going to talk, or is that couch your new commitment? I ask, forcing the words through clenched teeth. About what? He responds, sharp and dismissive, not even bothering to look at me. I count to 12 in my head, trying to hold on to patience. About us, about where we're headed, I say, my voice betraying the crack in my heart. He shrugs, and the gesture speaks louder than any words could. The room fills with suffocating silence. The TV continues humming on, unaware of the emotional wreckage unfolding in its wake. And in that moment, I realize it, our marriage, once sturdy, now feels like a house collapsing under its own weight. Bit by bit, our connection is falling apart, and neither of us knows how to fix it. Life's cruel irony has transformed our dreams into broken remnants. I watch him, sitting there. The man on the couch is a stranger now, a passing figure in the story of my life. The shift from love to indifference was subtle but devastating, like the first frost signaling the end of summer. Later, I prepare his favorite dinner, steak, cooked exactly how he likes it, or at least, I thought I did. When he walks into the kitchen, his footsteps heavy, his sour mood fills the room. He looks at the meal like a predator sizing up its prey. Is this the best you can do? His voice is colder than usual, grating like sandpaper. I tread carefully, referring to the temperature, not the. He cuts me off, glaring at me. I bite my tongue, knowing speaking up will only make things worse. I offer, I want my steak hot, and he leans in close, his whisper sending a chill down my spine. I expect to feel its life leave as I cut it. He jabs his fork into the steak. It's already dead. His words, quiet but venomous, leave me hollow. He pushes the plate away, looks at me with contempt, and mutters, forget it. He grabs his keys and storms out. Fix your mistakes, Bella, or next time, it won't just be dinner that gets tossed. The door slams, sealing the final chapter of our relationship. I stand frozen, staring at the untouched meal, wondering how we arrived at this point. If there's any chance to salvage what's left. I stand still, my gaze fixed on the door he slammed. The sound echoes, a harsh reminder of the truth neither of us is willing to confront. The cold, lifeless steak mirrors the feelings inside me, discarded and forgotten. Every step I take toward the trash feels heavier, like I'm throwing away not just food, but all the care, effort, and hope I had once invested in this relationship. To the outside world, we appeared perfect. Friends admired us, and his parents praised our marriage, but behind closed doors, things were different. Willie's demands grew, chipping away at my self-worth. My life had become a constant quest for his approval, which came as seldom as sunshine on a stormy day. That night, the dinner table became a battlefield for his criticisms. What's this? He said, pointing at the plate of broccoli and grilled chicken I made. Dinner, I answered, trying to maintain my composure. Broccoli again? Can you make anything else? His words were dripping with disdain as he pushed the plate away like it was poison. Suppressing my urge to respond, I offered, I can make something else. His sneer was quick and sharp. That would be a first. Anger surged within me, but I turned toward the kitchen before it could spill out. His voice followed me. Where are you going? To cook? Yeah, I muttered, barely holding my temper. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Sit down. Let's not pretend you have other plans. Your world revolves around me, remember? His words hit me hard, pulling me back into the suffocating reality I didn't want to face. Yeah, I murmured, defeated, and returned to the table. Later that night, as silence filled the apartment, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The weight of all the unspoken words and unfulfilled dreams pressed down on me. This wasn't a partnership, it was a prison built on fear, dependency, and a mask of perfection. But life has a way of intervening when you least expect it. One cold day, while carrying groceries, I slipped on some ice. Pain shot through my leg, sharp and intense. A few bystanders rushed to my aid, their concern a stark contrast to the indifference I had come to know. At the hospital, the doctor confirmed what I already knew: my leg was broken. It's broken, he said, as if casually announcing the weather. But the real pain wasn't the injury, it was having to tell Willie. I texted him, broke my leg, at the hospital. His response never came. That night in the hospital was cold and lonely. The nurses were efficient but distant, and the stale coffee didn't do much to warm me. By morning, I was discharged with crutches, a cast, and a list of instructions. When I got home, Willie was waiting. His face was stormy, but there was no concern in his eyes, no inquiry into how I was feeling. His first words were, "Where's dinner?" Standing on crutches, with my leg immobilized, something inside me snapped. "What do you think happened?" "I went dancing. Look at my leg," I yelled, my voice cracking under the weight of everything I had been bottling up. He didn't flinch. His response was a dismissive wave as he turned away, muttering that I should have been more careful. In that moment, the full scope of his selfishness hit me. The life I had tried to protect wasn't just broken, it was beyond saving. Willie's tirade made it clear, my broken leg was nothing more than an inconvenience to him. "You always have excuses," he spat bitterly. "You can't even do the one thing you're supposed to, can you?" I stood there, staring at Willie, struggling to grasp what had just happened. After a night spent at the hospital, his only concern was dinner. The way he spoke to me, so detached, so cold, cut deeper than any injury could. The space between us felt heavier than it ever had before. It wasn't just a physical wound anymore, it was the fracture of our relationship. Years of tension finally surfacing. My hands shook with both pain and disbelief, but I hobbled to the kitchen, determined to make dinner. Each movement felt like a slap in the face, mocking my attempts at normalcy. Near the overflowing trash, I paused, knowing I'd never hear the end of it from Willie. "What's this?" he barked. "You've been home all day and can't even take out the trash?" He stormed over, kicking the bag so it spilled all over the floor. "Clean it up," he ordered, voice filled with rage. As I knelt to pick up the mess, my hand trembled, not from the pain, but from the weight of his words. That night, sleep eluded me. His harsh tone echoed in my mind, mingling with the sting of unshed tears. Morning came, and nothing had changed, except for my resolve. The divorce papers sat before me on the kitchen table, waiting for him. As the coffee brewed, Willie wandered in, still reeking of alcohol. "Morning," he mumbled. "What's for breakfast?" I didn't answer. Instead, I slid the divorce papers toward him. He sneered when he saw them. "You serious?" "As serious as a heart attack," I replied, my voice calm despite the storm inside me. He laughed, dismissing me. "You don't have the guts." "I already filed," I shot back, locking eyes with him. "I just need your signature." His face darkened. "You think you can make it without me? You're nothing, can't even handle the trash." "I'm done talking, Willie," I said, my tone firm. "Sign the papers, or I'll have the authorities make you." He glared at me, his face twisted with rage, but finally, he grabbed the pen and signed. He threw the papers down as if they burned him. "Good luck," he sneered. "You'll be begging to come back before the month's over." I didn't flinch. I smiled, resolute. Those signed papers were my first step toward freedom. "Crawling isn't my style," I murmured. The next day, a strange stillness filled the house as I sipped my coffee. Willie casually mentioned a lawyer and the property split. "Got a lawyer," he said, as if it were the most normal thing. "You coming with me?" Despite my pain, I nodded, unsure of what lay ahead. He helped me into the car with surprising gentleness, adjusting my cast carefully. The drive to the lawyer's office felt like a strange echo of normalcy, as though nothing had changed. But then, without warning, he pulled over. "Tires low," he muttered, stepping out to inspect it. I followed, confused, but before I could ask any questions, he jumped back in the car and sped off, leaving me stranded on the side of the road. I stood there, stunned, as his car disappeared down the highway, alone on that empty road. It hit me, this wasn't the end. This was my beginning. I grabbed my phone, hit record, and called him. My voice trembled with anger and frustration. "Come back," I screamed, my voice cracking. He laughed coldly. "This is what you get for trying to divorce me," he taunted before hanging up. The line went dead, and I stood there, the sound of his car fading away, leaving me alone in the biting cold. As the world passed me by, a rickety Jeep pulled up beside me. To my surprise, it was Gary, my old boss. His voice was filled with concern as he helped me into his warm vehicle. "You look like hell, Bella," he said gently. "Why didn't you call someone?" he asked, his brow furrowed. "I thought I could handle it," I replied quietly, realizing how wrong I'd been. Gary's face hardened. "He left you with a broken leg? What a coward." The drive to Vedic Tech was silent, but Gary's presence brought me a sense of security I hadn't realized I needed. He guided me into his office and handed me a mug of steaming coffee. The warmth seeped into my bones, a comfort I hadn't expected. "Thanks," I whispered. Gary paced, clearly agitated. "I can't believe that bastard," he muttered. He turned to me, his voice softer. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know," I admitted, feeling the uncertainty of my future weigh on me. "We need you back," Gary said earnestly. "The team hasn't been the same since you left." A flicker of hope sparked within me. "You serious?" "As serious as a heart attack," he said, his tone firm. "You're the best we ever had. I should have fought harder to keep you." I glanced down at my cast. "Might be tough with this." Gary waved off my concern. "We'll figure it out. No excuses." I smiled faintly, touched by his belief in me. "I'll think about it," I replied, but deep down, I knew what my answer would be. The next morning, Willie stormed into the office, his boots loud against the floor. When he saw me standing next to Gary, his face went pale, before turning into a scowl. "What's this about?" he demanded, his voice dripping with suspicion. Gary motioned to a chair. "Sit," he ordered. Willie crossed his arms, his expression defensive. "What lies has she been feeding you?" "No lies," I said coolly, "just the truth." Gary slid a recorder across the table. "Care to listen to your greatest hits?" Willie's face drained of color. "You can't fire me over this," he stammered. "Oh, I can, and I will," Gary responded sharply. Willie's desperation grew. "I'll sue." "Go ahead," I said, my voice icy, "but you'll lose. I've got all the evidence, and you've got nothing." Gary stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Get out, Willie, you're done." With that, Willie stormed out, and a sense of relief washed over me. In court, the judge's gavel fell decisively. "This court grants the separation and orders compensation," the judge declared. It felt like the first real step toward a life without Willie's cruelty. At work, I found a new rhythm, each task bringing me closer to rebuilding my life. My colleagues were unwavering in their support. "Feels strange, huh?" Harold said one morning. I smiled. "Strange doesn't cover it. It's like I've been reborn." He chuckled. "Zombie Bella, back for revenge?" "Something like that," I grinned, "but this time, I'm not taking crap from anyone." "That's the spirit," Harold said, his nod full of encouragement. This wasn't just a new start, it was a life reclaimed, and I was ready to live it on my terms. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.